Hello guys, Lorenzo here. Welcome back to KSP Next, episode 12, where we will be sending a veritable plethora of missions. Mission 1 of the day is Bureaucrat 5. After last episode's successful landing, we now get the actual contract to put a person into orbit and return her safely. Now, Catherine Brooks has been returned from the dead and will be attempting this mission. Now, for a change, I'm going to show the whole ascent path, albeit quite accelerated, to showcase my newfound skill in ascending to orbit in a more efficient way. See, turning around earlier, whilst avoiding aerial disintegration, will save us a lot of delta V, and in fact now the whole first stage just barely doesn't make it to orbit. We only need a couple of 100 meters per second from the second stage. That's a pretty big waste of a perfectly good second stage, but we're gonna spend some time in low Earth orbit, and therefore we don't need all the delta V in this rocket. Um, the contract stipulates that we spend at least one full orbit. It's about 90 minutes in space, and we're gonna do that just to, it's the bureaucrat mission. We're going to impress the contract lawyers. I thought there were more supplies on this mission initially, but there weren't. It was an old design that got produced, so there's absolutely no chance that Catherine is going to last a full day in space, which is a milestone that I quite desperately want to achieve in preparation of some manned lunar flybys and stuff like that. So whilst we are in orbit, let's check out a few systems on the capsule. But it becomes apparent pretty quickly that the standard supplies will in fact not last the full day that is required on subsequent missions. So Catherine receives orders after completing the parameters of the contract, by the way, which will pay us over 250,000 credits, so it's gonna make us rich. She receives orders to set course for re-entry, which she's now doing, and expertly piloting the capsule down through the atmosphere. Okay, that's the first mission of the day. Hooray, we are now a rich space program once again. Look at that cash. Right, second mission, what shall we do? We're launching a very similar booster, a Ranger 1. Actually, yeah, it's the Ranger 1, disregard the Dash 2. What I'm gonna do with the Ranger mission is try and send something into outer space, specifically solar orbit. It's just the same probe that we sent to the moon, but we're outfitting it with a new, higher bandwidth, longer range antennae to hopefully transmit some stuff back. But unfortunately the first stage fails, although that only costs a little bit of delta V. So hopefully that is the one failure. We should still be able to make it to solar orbit. Here we have the second stage burning away nicely, plugging away at the delta V, raising the apoapsis, which is hopefully going to escape Earth's sphere of influence sooner rather than later. But oh damn it, another engine failure, and that means another mission repurposed as a communications satellite. I'm actually quite liking the idea that our communications network is 100% built out of failed, well, semi-failed missions. So much so that I think I'm going to strap solar panels and transmitters to all upper stages that are going to stay in space. Anyway, look at that. That junkyard comm system network is coming along quite nicely. Right, next mission, Tranquility 2-B. We are going to add a crater to the moon. Now, I'm showing less and less of these ascents because, well, we've literally been doing dozens of them with the same booster. Here we are powering towards the moon. And adding a crater or doing an impact mission is actually a contract that we have accepted and hope to get paid on. And the reason for that is that it's actually a decent scientific objective. I mean, it's good to know that the moon is real. The burn otherwise is proceeding nominally, and the stage and the engines are not gonna do any failures. Well, they didn't do any failures. In the end, after a few days of coasting, batteries are about half depleted now, the probe is hurtling towards the moon, and it's looking pretty certain that that crater will indeed be done. The missions I'm doing now are pretty low profile, and I thought I'd explain for a bit why that is. The technology required to do more advanced missions is literally taking years to develop, and I don't want to just fast forward the time. I want to get some milestones completed, get some science in, so that we can at least keep researching when the nodes unlock. Here we go. Moon successfully impacted with confidence and prejudice, and another contract in the bank. Once more, under the breach, we now have the first non-pilot Kerbal in a rocket, and this is a repurposed Thor 7 booster. Christ in the Endurance one, which has been outfitted with some extra life support supplies, and we're basically going to see how fast Bill eats, breathes, and produces waste. We may even be able to immediately spend the day in orbit, but well, orbit has been achieved. No unfortunate engine malfunctions or any of those shenanigans. Bill spending a few hours in orbit, and if we pay attention to the resource panel on the top right, it becomes apparent that there is no way he would ever make it to 24 hours, limiting factors being mainly electric charge and waste. So we know what to increase on subsequent missions. Also gaining a lot of confidence in the re-entries, and Bill also makes it down safe. Objective achieved. We learned about his nutrient consumption. Now a night mission, Ranger 1-2. This is the proper -2, trying once again to escape the Earth's sphere of influence and go into solar orbit, launching at night because that will give us a single burn exit vector of the Earth, which will take us further away from the sun and thus giving us a nice achievement, like you go really far. Here we are in the night. Unfortunately, a first stage malfunction, this time with a good third of the fuel still in the tank, but we should have the second stage available still. Unfortunately, a totally non-pilot error related incident deploys the last stage, which decouples the probe from the rocket too soon, and we now have a fully functioning probe on a fully functional second stage. That doesn't want to listen anymore. They're playing little space rodeo. And it seems more and more unlikely that they will actually ever leave the sphere of influence of the Earth. Actually, they are just about reaching apoapsis, spinning around uselessly. I do try using the RCS system to regain control of the rocket, but as you can see, this is not really working that well. So I think at this point it's pretty safe to say that the Ranger 1-B is not going to leave Earth. It's not going to be a communication satellite. So let's try another rocket, shall we? In a second. Here we go. Another rocket, another mission. The Endurance 2. Now we're gonna send the one astronaut that hasn't had a flight yet, Bob, into space, and we brought a lot of supplies, hopefully enough to sustain him for 24 hours. This rocket has been tried and tested pretty well by now. Unfortunately, his second stage, just after performing a pitch-up maneuver to correct a falling apoapsis, a falling trajectory, does suffer a failure really early into the flight. And this actually is a pretty stressful situation because we are on an incredibly steep re-entry trajectory of with a starting periapsis of just minus 700 kilometers. This is, I think, the steepest re-entry we have ever done. So this is the time for Bob, who is not even a pilot, to really buckle down and harness the descent mode of the capsule. We're currently in lifting orientation, trying our darndest to use the lifting body shape of the capsule to flatten off our very, very steep trajectory. We will be paying close attention to the surface info MacJeb readout, and especially the vertical speed, currently at minus 270 meters per second, which by itself isn't horrible. That's actually a good number. I like that number. But it's if we don't do anything about it, it's going to increase by a lot. Now another readout we're going to have to pay attention to is the G meter. Ideally, I want to keep it below 10 to just, give Bob a chance of not passing out and breaking any limbs by sitting in his chair. You can see lower in the screen that the defunct upper stage is now happily exploding in the atmosphere. That's probably a nice, reassuring soundtrack for our buddy Bob. The outside of the pod is starting to glow a dull red, probably because of the heating, and we can see in the top right the resource panel that the ablative heat shield is actually ablating. So far everything is performing nominally. We're still under 300 meters per second sync rate. We're still positioned in maximum lift orientation. What we have to watch out for here is that we actually managed to pull out of the dive and still spend too much time in the upper atmosphere, so we burn up without slowing down too much. But so far we are still on a good course. We're at 68 kilometers. We are starting to decelerate. Bob is just starting to feel the G-forces. He has a massive compartment of snacks. Oh no, wait, that's on the upper stage that's burned up. All his snacks have burned up, and now he's already returning to Earth after spending just minutes in space rather than the intended 24 hours. Our sync rate is actually dropping now. We are, well, our contact with the atmosphere is lifting the capsule up, and this is starting to worry me as we have already expended about 25% of our heat shield. We're at 60 kilometers. The real high G-force re-entry forces will start to happen between 50 and 40. So I'm rotating the capsule, as you can see on the nav ball. Now we should be lifting sideways, so in effect entering ballistically if we don't care where we end up. And I'm actually going to increase our sync rate by going upside down. And we can see our sync rate increasing pretty rapidly in the surface info display. Our G-forces are rising. We're at about 4 Gs, almost halfway through our heat shield. And I'm trying to keep our sync rate at about 300 meters per second. That has worked pretty well so far. And, well, Bob doesn't know it, but we're feeling pretty confident that he'll pull through. We are more than halfway through our heat shield, though. And starting to lift again. Our sync rate is now under 200 meters per second, but we are pretty low in the atmosphere. It's 46 kilometers, and our Gs are creeping over 5. Got about a third of our heat shield left, so we have to slow down faster rather than slow now. Just leaving the sync rate at its natural value. By that I mean we're aiming sideways, which being over the ocean doesn't really matter, and also the lifting body of the pod then doesn't really affect the sync rates. Between 200 and 300 meters per second again. As I said, that's a good amount of sync to target. We have bled off most of the speed. We're at a brisk 7 Gs, about 3.5 kilometers per second remaining. Our heat shield is not ablating as fast anymore because we're going a good deal slower than we were before. And we're still at 37 kilometers, so not a lot of risk of slamming into the ocean prematurely. The heat flux is now abating, and it seems as though Bob has pulled through pretty well. His safety and survival is now virtually assured. So unfortunately, we didn't get to test out the endurance. We didn't get to do the endurance mission. We lost the rocket, lost the mission, but we saved Bob. So a little Apollo 13 moment there, even though he didn't really leave the Earth. So what did we do this episode? Nothing terribly exciting. We built out our communications relay network. We sent another thing to the moon, gaining a little bit of confidence in those systems, and we have passed about a year making headway towards the new technology node, which will unlock more advanced engines and larger fuel tanks, both of which will be necessary to develop a new booster capable of sending much bigger payloads into space for manned flybys of the moon and probes to distant and exotic places. For now, this is the last mission. Bob splashing down into the ocean. Check back next time for more. I'm Lorenzo. Thanks for watching. See you later.